Let's talk about Goro Miyazaki. Well, I was looking at Goro's various interviews and producer Suzuki's comments and noticed that there is an interesting structure to their relationship. I saw the trailer of Tales from Earthsea on television the other day, and I was so disappointed because it was Ghibli-ish, but not Miyazaki-ish. Well, of course, he's not Hayao Miyazaki. It was that same old boring Ghibli film. I was thinking, I wish Hayao Miyazaki had done it himself and not this punk. I want to see more of Hayao Miyazaki's works, damn it! Forget Takahata! I was thinking, if this was Hayao Miyazaki, he would have made this dragon look so cool. And this town look awesome. The structures and the ideas are all so uninteresting and dull. So I didn't like Goro Miyazaki at that stage. To me, he was just a guy benefiting from his father's name, using his connection to join Ghibli, the most important studio in Japanese animation. To me, he was the bad guy. Suzuki was interviewed the other day. He insisted that there should be no editing, so this whole interview was posted somewhere online, and it was really interesting. First of all, the interviewer decided to cut out the part where Suzuki was criticizing Hayao Miyazaki. The part where he said, "No matter how hard I tried to train young directors, Miyazaki destroys them all." So he destroyed them. Well, there's nothing to be surprised about. Of course he would. I saw the documentary on Princess Mononoke and saw the scene where Miyazaki takes the drawing from an animator and says, "This is why you're a nobody. You don't draw the hand, you just draw the knife in the hand. That's how you make it look fast." And he starts to draw himself. This shows his genius, but at the same time, you wouldn't want to work there, would you? Here you have a genius who you've wanted to become since you were a child, telling you every day that you are nothing. No one could stand that. That's why Ghibli never came up with a young, aspiring director. At one time, they were considering hiring Mamoru Oshii, but Oshii said, "No way." And they were also considering Hideaki Anno, but the Ghibli staff were very reluctant about the idea. They were like, "Anno? So it didn't happen. The Ghibli staff are a bit snobbish in a way. Anyway, all the young directors were discouraged and depressed by Hayao Miyazaki. Keep that in mind. Among Miyazaki's previous works, well, this is back to the story about Miyazaki destroying young directors, but Kiki's Delivery Service, and what else? Not Princess Mononoke. A bit before that, there was a piece he didn't intend to direct. Someone else was making it, but during production, Miyazaki intervened and said, "You are not capable of this." And he made it his own project. That's why the younger directors don't grow. Sorry, oolong tea please. There's no way they can. He's snatched 2 films away from the younger directors thus far, and he's constantly yelling at the team. When they decided to do an adaptation of Earthsea, Miyazaki said, "No one in Ghibli can do it." But when someone would ask him, "Then why don't you do it?" he'd say, "No way!" He's a handful, but a genius. Such a handful. He's hard to deal with, but he's Ghibli's only weapon. Ghibli is like North Korea using nuclear weapons as its only defense. Miyazaki always wanted to do the piece Earthsea. He has been saying that for the last 30 years. About 30 years ago, he wrote repeatedly to the American writer Ursula K. Le Guin, who was regarded as a likely Nobel Prize winner at the time. He desperately wanted to do this piece. He was like, I want to do it. I want to do it. But Miyazaki always got this impolite reply saying, Japanese anime could never do this piece justice. 20 years ago, Miyazaki made his last plea. But Le Guin said no, and he gave up. But a few years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, Le Guin apologized to him by letter. She said, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Hayao Miyazaki is a true genius, and I would love for him to do this piece. But when Miyazaki got the letter, aside from the reason that he was busy, he was already at the height of his career. Like the cartoonist Osamu Tezuka, who lost all his teeth by clenching too hard while drawing his manga, Miyazaki works intensely on all his films. It causes a lot of pressure for everyone in the studio when the president of the firm works the hardest. What kind of a president is that? I wouldn't want to work there. No way. It was really hard for him to make that decision. But Miyazaki said, sorry, I can't. But then the producer, Suzuki, goes, well, Hayao Miyazaki may have rejected the offer, but we, Ghibli, have not. Suzuki sent Le Guin a message saying, okay, Ghibli will accept your offer. Le Guin thought Hayao Miyazaki had accepted the offer and was like, yay! And was overjoyed. But now what? Ghibli held a number of meetings. Miyazaki would say things like, I'm not going to do it. But if not me, who? This is ridiculous. You should reject the offer. And Goro Miyazaki, the director of the Ghibli Museum, who happened to be there, ended up accepting the job to direct the film. On December 26th, during the Christmas holidays, the Miyazakis held a family meeting about the issue. In this meeting, Hayao Miyazaki said to Goro, you don't have any talent, any ability, any passion to direct. You have nothing. You could never do Earthsea. Hayao and Goro haven't spoken to each other ever since. This story is a legend. And we even know the exact date of this meeting. But Suzuki insisted that Goro should be the director. Miyazaki is stubborn, but he always gives in to Suzuki. And Miyazaki was told not to say bad things about Goro, at least in the studio or in public. What a father! He's a terrible genius and a terrible father. So Goro signed up as director, but somebody had to explain to Le Guin that it's not Hayao, but it is his son that is directing. They eventually decided that Goro Miyazaki would go, that the producer Suzuki and Goro would go together. And then Hayao Miyazaki interrupts again. To make things clear, I'd like to add that Miyazaki always objects to ideas. It's not just about his son, he objects to everything. He said, why are you taking Goro with you? He's an incompetent director, so he should at least be in the studio. You should go by yourself. Suzuki retaliated with, well, you should come too, since you rejected the offer. Miyazaki couldn't compete with that, and he was eventually dragged to America. Now, any normal person would freak out. They'd think, oh, my idol, Ursula K. Le Guin. I've wanted to work on her novel for a long time, and I've ruined the opportunity. But Miyazaki was relaxed, and as soon as he met her, he started talking about how much he wanted to make an animation based on her novel. Ursula was like, "Why on earth did you back out?" He said, "I just can't do it anymore. I would have jumped on it if I was young. Nausicaa and Howl, they were all influenced by your works. I have worked like that for years and I have now become empty. So I'd like to have my young employee, Goro Miyazaki, do it instead of me. Well, although he's not really that experienced." Then Ursula said, "You want to make an adaptation of the third tale instead of the first? Ged in the first tale is young, but he's a middle-aged man in the third. Wouldn't it be better for you to do it?" Her rationale was solid. Miyazaki had nothing to say in return. But then, Suzuki began to say, "No, Goro Miyazaki is a very talented young man, and he's respected by his team members. And this is his father. But you know, Ursula is an American. She doesn't understand this type of Japanese moral obligation." She didn't understand a word he was saying and asked, "But why is he directing?" It's understandable. 20, 30 years ago, she rejected Hayao Miyazaki. She wouldn't possibly say yes to a complete rookie, even if he was Miyazaki's son. So Suzuki showed her a poster Goro drew. This poster is used for the ad. It's a picture of a huge dragon and Ged fighting on the coast. Suzuki showed her the original drawing. He said, "Goro drew this himself. He drew this even before he was assigned to direct the piece." And then Miyazaki, who was beside him, said, "What is this crap? My son doesn't understand the story at all." You see, Ged is directly facing the dragon. The structure is all wrong. This is proof that he doesn't understand the story. It's like when Yuzan Kaibara renounces Shiro Yamaoka in Oshimbo, saying, "You idiot, you know nothing." You remember that line? It would be understandable if Miyazaki had stopped there, but he went on to say, "By the way, here's my plan for Earthsea." And he took out loads of documents from his bag and said, "See, I'm better than him." Ursula was astounded. She was like, "Why are you here?" Suzuki says in his interview, "I've worked with Miyazaki for years, but that was the only time I really wanted to hit him." Ursula was at a loss and said, "Well, what are you going to do then?" At that point, Miyazaki finally came to his senses. If he showed off too much, she might start asking him to direct the film again. So he said, "I will watch over him. If he comes up with a boring script, I will reject it immediately." But Ursula was still confused and asked, "Well, what is your post exactly? Are you going to be the producer?" And then Miyazaki suddenly stood up, pointed at Suzuki, and shouted, "I am never going to be a producer!" At the height of the excitement, Ursula's son came in and said, "We have dinner ready for you in the living room." They all ate dinner together and had a good time. Suzuki thought, sons of geniuses are always kind. For one, Goro accepted the directorship, and Le Guin's son was very hospitable. Geniuses are a handful, but their sons are kind. They couldn't get any approval from Ursula that day. But Ursula's son convinced her later on, and she eventually said yes to Goro Miyazaki directing Earthsea. Well, yeah, so when you read Goro's diary, it's shocking. If he ever saw his father in a room, he wouldn't go in, and vice versa. It was like a secret agreement. They never spoke to each other, and if they ever were on course to pass each other in the hallway, one of them would turn back. Even now, Hayao Miyazaki says publicly that his son has no talent or skills whatsoever. He doesn't hide his opinion. Now, why do I find Goro so interesting? I also used to think that Goro didn't have any talent. I thought that he didn't have talent as an animator or as a director. I couldn't understand why he accepted this role, and why did he become director of the Ghibli Museum? He studied gardening in university, but then he went on to become an architect. Then I found out, in reality, Goro had wanted to do anime since he was a child. But his father would always say to him, "You're not good enough." And his mother would beg, "Forget about anime. Please don't become an evil person like your father and make your family cry." What a family! So, although Goro was interested in anime and manga, he couldn't say that to either of his parents. Whether his mother or his father, it would be a disaster. And so instead, he studied gardening at university. Then he became the director of the Ghibli Museum. The reason is simple. Hayao Miyazaki's designs for the museum were mostly impossible from an architectural point of view. The architect would draw a plan based on his design, but Miyazaki would always say, "That's not what I asked for." So they needed a mediator. And so Goro came in and took on the role of facing his father. He would meet the architect himself. Whatever he showed to his father, he knew he'd say, "No." So Goro would always say, "Yes, you're absolutely right." And he would go back to the architect and explain what his father wanted as much as he could, bit by bit. So you see, he fulfilled his role as the son of a genius. The young Ghibli directors failed to make it because they had to face this genius, Hayao Miyazaki, this enormously talented man who kept telling them that they had no talent. Naturally, many of them felt worthless, and that's why they eventually ran away or quit. But Goro, on the other hand, had a great talent for being the son of a genius. He doesn't mind being rejected. Which is why Suzuki felt that Goro should direct. Miyazaki would scare away any director he chose, but Goro would never be scared off. Even if his talent were denied, he would say, "Okay, okay," and just get on with his work. And Suzuki was right. Apparently, Tales from Earthsea is on track. When Le Guin's son came to Japan, he and Goro got on really well. So I used to think that Goro Miyazaki didn't have any talent for animation. But Suzuki was right. Goro's the only guy who can direct Earthsea for now. Now, I still don't like the trailer, so I'm not a fan of the film, but I will root for Goro Miyazaki.
Thank you for watching until the end. I am the most famous Otaku King in Japan, Otaking Toshio Okada. I started planning to talk overseas about animations and movies popular in Japan in English. Before long, I'm planning to add English subtitles to movie talking in Japanese, so please look forward to it. If you ask a question in this comment field of this video, maybe I will talk about comments as a theme. We welcome the people who are interested in the forefront of Japanese otaku culture. and those who want to hear stories of interesting animations and movies. So please subscribe our channel. If there is good relation, I will get better and I will do my best. Thanks.